Well, welcome back, everyone. Today, I have a great guest, Dawna Campbell, who I've met online, and I think she's bringing a lot of great information for you today that I think you'll be interested to hear. So, Dawna, thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here and to Combat to Commerce. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, thank you. So, can you give us a brief, background on who you are, what you do?
Yes, absolutely. I work in the personal transformation and healing space, but that means a lot of different things to a lot of people. But I didn't start there. And so, a little bit about my background. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and it was during the time of the big tech era. So,
Mhm.
immediately that already paints a visual picture of, oh, here's somebody that's in the tech industry and they were well off and money and abundance because we had that big boom. Well, I'm here to tell you that I, like a lot of people in that area, grew up on the other side of the tracks, meaning
Mm.
that we weren't we were part of it, but my parents were both blue collar workers. They both worked. We were on food stamps. We were on welfare, and we often received assistance in a lot of other areas in our life because we were living just above the poverty line at that time. And what was so fascinating about that was I remember my mom always asking, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And not knowing anything different, I
Right.
was going to, join Greenpeace and save the whales. And I didn't realize the women's liberation movement either at the age of 8. And
Yeah.
so she's like, no, you can be a doctor or a scientist or a lawyer. And she would get angry at me. And I didn't understand that.
Mm.
Well, knowing how I grew up near poverty and knowing that you could have all of these opportunities in the world, my parents just wanted the best for me and to be what I could be. So I became very passionate about helping people in their financial world, like middle class America, because I saw my peers going to college and full ride scholarships or their parents paying for it. I got to work, put myself
Mhm.
through college, that story.
Yeah.
And so I chose to become a financial advisor. Soon I was a managing principal of an investment firm. I managed $500 million. And at the end of 10 years, clients who were following all the rules, myself included, we weren't any better off than what we were
Mm.
before. So then I left the industry after a decade and did a deep dive. And now, with the transformation work that I've learned, how to really come into an alignment with who you are, who you're meant to be, and how that works on a scientific, energetic level, and abundance happens. That's a little
Awesome.
bit about my backstory there. There's more,
No.
but there's
Yeah.
the overall.
No, but I love it. And so if anyone's listening and saying, okay, well, how with combat to commerce, people transitioning out of the military, how does this relate? And I think the
Yeah.
beauty of this is, right, a lot of us are in the same situation as the story you just told, right? We've served the country, whether it was 1 year, 20 years, 30 years, and
Yes.
you're in that environment, and it's a culture onto itself, right? Like
It
I
is.
was joking, everyone has the same haircuts, and we
Yeah.
all wear the same uniform. And then when you leave that, you're like, well, what do I do now? Like, how do I survive? How do I make my life? This is what I all I've known, and I think that's so important for what you do. Do you see a correlation there?
Absolutely, absolutely. The storyline might be different, but the aspects of the story and what we go through are the same, especially in the military. Because if you served lifelong in the military and you come out, you're going, who am I? But then it's not just who you are, how do you move forward? How do you create a new life financially? But there's also health issues because a lot
Mhm.
of people have PTSD and the veterans and all of the different things. Yes, there's the different systems to take care of it, but it addresses the symptoms, not necessarily the root. And then there's relationship issues because how life in military is not civilian life. They're
Mhm.
like two different things, and it's really hard for a lot of people to blend it together. So the problems and the issues and obstacles and the challenges are the same. The storyline might be different details.
Yeah. Can you kind of walk through how you would help someone, or kind of when they reach out to you, what is the starting point for what you do?
Yeah.
Like if someone reaches out to you.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I start with is What is it about you that you would like to have different, or something you would like to have better, or something that you would like to change? We all have a list. And I'm going to tell you the top two in the nation, no matter where you are, what most people are asking for are better finances and confidence,
Mm.
interestingly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we'll just take finances, for example. Well, money is emotional. So, how you think and feel about yourself on the inside is how money responds on the outside. Money by itself, unless you do something with it and put it into motion in any way, shape, or form, whether you're paying a debt or you're investing, does nothing. But how you think and feel about yourself is how that money responds. Here's what I mean by that. A lot of times in the financial planning world, we would say something like, here is your net worth, your portfolio value is, your assets appreciated. Well, on a deep soul level, what I was discovering with clients was I just wanted to know that I was worthy or that
Mm.
someone valued me or appreciated me. And I started seeing this correlation, and that as people started valuing themselves, appreciating, understanding their worth, knew that they were enough on that soul level, their money supply always increased. And
Hmm.
so it's through a series of asking questions. What do you want to change? How does it feel not having it? How does it feel having it? And then doing a energetic shift in the mind, which is what we call mind whispering, to reprogram that part of our subconscious to get the result that we're looking for instantaneously.
Wow. So how long of a process is that? Is that, I mean, is like a individual session? Is it several sessions? Like, how do you, because it seems like to,
Hmm.
to have someone change that mind frame to, it's one thing to hear it, right? But to embrace it.
Right.
What is that like?
The process, it can
Yeah.
take one session. A session might be an hour to an hour and a half to start getting the new energy in motion to start attracting back. And people do get instant results from the first session. And then also, I do have year long clients that work with me more in that VIP caliber because we work more intimately on a VIP level, doing more of the shifts and changes. So it's like peeling back the layers of the onion, like you said, but at the same time, we're putting on flowers, petals of a lotus flower. So, how far back do you really want to peel? Because we can do a surface layer and you'll get results. But if we get down to the heart of it,
Hmm.
everything else in your life can shift and change. But then new things might arise. We keep the reprogramming going. And then the next thing you know, a year later, you're living the life that you've meant to live. So, a quick example in the financial world, often I say you get 25% or more increase after working with me. And that might be 3 times there. We start keeping track of the numbers. But then my clients that stayed on a year, year and a half, 2 years, we keep track of their numbers. They're now at 50, 60% increase in income. And things
Wow.
just like show up in the mail like, who knew I overpaid on my college loans and now I got a refund and I was part of this and I had no idea. And it came, 6 days after my session because of the timing and things like that. So it's really how far do you really want to go in your own transformational process?
That's it's fascinating. So if you help me understand a little bit more, so it is along the lines of the way you're thinking and putting the energy out there is what's attracting that same positive energy back.
Yes. So it's an inside job.
Hmm.
So what we think and what we feel, well, what we think up here is about 10% of our conscious reality. There's a lot of different studies out there with a lot of different numbers. I use 10% because scientists measured Albert Einstein's brain and his conscious awareness was 10%. I would hope to think that we've been evolving since that
Yeah.
time, and I like
let's
numbers.
let's
So the
hope.
other 90%, right? That other 90% is in our subconscious and it's how we feel. And it stems a lot in the heart space. It's like the undercurrent, the things that are underneath. So, what I do is I work on this subconscious level, shifting and changing the vibrational frequency of the feelings that got associated to an event to align with your thought process. So, a lot of people will say, I want to be rich and abundant. But yet, on the inside, They might feel a lack energy, a less than, who am I, imposter syndrome.
Mm.
Well, that's not in alignment with the thought. It's the opposite. I heard a word earlier today from Dr. Joe Vitale, and it was the counter intention. So we have the intention, I'm rich and abundant, but the counter intention is I'm less than. So what I do is I come in and I work on that frequency level with you. We find the event that that less than energy got associated with. The event doesn't change, but how you think and feel about that event does. Because if less than exists on the opposite end of the spectrum, so does more than. So we go through a little neuroscience, neurolinguistic reprogramming, and then you see the event differently. And the next thing you know, you feel more than. So when you say, I'm rich and abundant, you feel rich and abundant. And then you blink and you're like, oh, there's the rich in abundance and it's here. So that's how the process works. But what we
Wow.
do is we send out signals that resist that richness and that abundance.
Yeah. So I could see, if I bring it back to confidence, which you said is one of the things you focus on too, right?
Yeah.
So an individual, let's say, is transitioning from the military, and they read job descriptions, and the job
Yes.
descriptions don't match. Like, it's like a different language, right, than what we might be
Mhm.
seeing in the military. Might have some correlation, but there's, yeah, I've never used this program, or I've never even, I don't even know what this is, or I don't have the
Right.
certification. So you have a lot of internal doubt that I'm worthy or I'm qualified for any opportunities on the outside. And then I could see it kind of taking us down a further negative hole of, you know, you kind of find yourself in a rut where I feel like I can't achieve anything. I get depressed. Whereas your program reprograms
Mhm.
that on the confidence wise. And then,
Right.
essentially that positive energy and that changing of your internal feelings and putting that out there, maybe you see more opportunities coming out toward you, you think?
Yes, absolutely. Because the perception of how you see it shifts and changes. And it's a lot of the work that I teach, a lot of the work that I share, and a lot of the work that I do with my private clients. And it's really, really interesting on those levels with when you start realizing what you're putting out to what is really coming back, and is it in alignment or is it not in alignment. But in with the word confident, what I find most amusing is that many people come and say, well, I just want more confidence, I need more confidence, I don't have confidence. Well, everything is already inside of you, and you're already pretty confident that you don't have confidence. So, therefore, there's confidence inside of you. It's there. You're just
Yeah.
recognizing it from a lack point of view instead of the abundance point of view.
Half glass half full versus glass half empty, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then how long do you want to hold that glass?
Yeah. So how you've been doing this. Have you seen um, any unique or any stories that really stand out to you, or any examples of clients that you don't have to name them by name, obviously, but
Yeah,
situations where it really was a dramatic shift and helping them?
absolutely. Absolutely. I do have clients that come to me that do have significant health issues. Um, One of the prominent ones that, and it's just with how our world works today, is cancer. But then I have clients by utilizing this process that are still cancer free, doctor verified 7, 8 years later. But
Hmm.
it took a good solid 3, 4 months of intentional work to shift and change some of those vibrational frequencies to get the result that we're looking for. Because cancer, for example, resonates to the energy of resentment. Well, when we start uncovering where the resentment got stuck in a person's life and change that frequency, you see it differently. You're in a different vibration here. The cancer's down here with resentment. It has nothing to stick to
Hmm.
because you're no longer in that same emotional state. So it leaves the body. And so I have several clients in that arena, the financial arena, relationships. Everyone has their own unique story. And then my clients that are more in the VIP where they work with me weekly. I'll come out and do intensives with them that are exclusive, 3-4 days, showing them how to do the work, doing the work with them, attending events with them. They get the whole spectrum of it all. And those are the ones that really do go and excel to the extra mile. So, say celebrity status from nobody knowing you more to a B list or an A listed type celebrity, because
Hmm.
this process works on all things.
Wow. I need to sign up. It's like,
Yeah, everyone needs to sign up, and
so,
I'll teach you how to do it. So,
yeah,
beauty.
that'd be great. Well, yeah, I mean, when you have, so what I've found is people don't like to waste money. So when you have very wealthy people and business leaders and others who are investing in this, uh,
Mm,
that investment to me speaks volumes, right?
yes.
Because they don't. There's very. I don't know many people who put a lot of financial weight in something that they don't see value in. So I think that's phenomenal
Exactly.
and a good and a great way for to kind of justify things you're doing. You're getting a buy-in. Do you have like big retreats that they invite you to, or is it like small group conferences, or how do you usually see this in business leaders?
So, for me personally, there's a lot of different ways that I express out the personal transformation and healing work. So, one, I do speak on stages, and two, I do write books. Three, I write for magazines and various, I have a podcast, like we're
Hmm.
podcasting here as well. There are retreats. So, there's different types of retreats for the different types of groups. Some of them are small, intimate groups of maybe 10 people. Some of them can be the private one on one intensives that I call them. To me, that's still a retreat, even though there's one person, because it's exclusive work just for you. And then there's the bigger corporate type retreats, the experiential retreats, that those numbers can be as high, and we're transforming all at the same time. And because I teach everything that I do teach via Zoom, but I also teach live and in person over 2-3 days. So those also could be considered into the retreat categories. So there's a lot of different methods of delivery based on where you want to be and where you want those touch points to be. Because I know, and you were talking about, the return on investment. And the more that you invest, the more exclusive the work becomes for you, the bigger the return comes back. So, if you invested, just say, the financially fit transformation course that I teach, it's a $5,000 course, but it is a quarter long program. We go for 12 weeks, and then it's one on one and some one on one time that's mixed in there. Well, after 5 years, if you follow the work, and I do allow people to retake the course complimentary if they want to take it a second time, because there's a lot in there. At the end of 5 years, that $5,000 investment, if you made $100,000 a year in income, should grow at a minimum at that 25% or more consistently. It'd be $750,000. So $750,000 in 5 years' time as an annual income for a $5,000 investment is a pretty good ROI,
Yeah, I would say so. I would say
right?
so. Yeah. So I found this, what you're doing very interesting. A big reason is I think for me, toward the end of my career, and I'm just about to retire. I'm in the last few months before I retire. The last couple of years, I've had some health issues with
Hmm.
pain, right? Just years of wear and
Yes.
tear. And when I would when I would think about it, like feeling sorry for myself, I felt like it got worse. But as
Yes.
I went to, I requested some therapy, and it opened my eyes about thinking positively and not dwelling on the negativity of the pain I was in, and
Hmm.
I started to feel better. um, I felt like I there was definitely the some of the aches and pains, but I felt like I could do more the more positive I thought about it and stopped thinking about, oh, poor me. And I started thinking about, okay, what can I do now? What can I do? And getting more confident. And so that line of thinking got me really interested in kind of what you're doing on putting that positive energy out there
Hmm.
and bringing it back.
Hmm.
Do you see that? I know you mentioned cancer. Do you have a lot of people who forget finance, forget confidence are coming to you mostly for health reasons, or even what do you see? Because there's a lot of veterans transitioning who, whether it's
Yes,
on a lot of pills and a lot of medication, whatever the case is, who in a lot of
exactly.
pain.
Yes, it's a mix. And you can't work in one area without working in another area because the universe is all or
Mm-hmm.
nothing. And
Mm.
it always is more so than all. So if we work in the area of health to eliminate pain, well, guess what? Because it's going to overlap because our energy field sends out signals, and whatever we're feeling is what comes back. So if we're in the energy of pain, for example, pain resonates a lot. The initial top energy is guilt and feeling guilty about something. And you're like, well, I'm not a guilty person. Well, there might have been guilt in a situation that you were in, and we uncover where that is, when it started, and maybe even a time before, because it's usually in the energy field before it comes in. And then when we go through that transformation, we send out different signals. So it might be peace, it might be happiness, it might be whatever you consider pain free. So it might be
Mm-hmm.
freedom. But if we're working in that area, it's going to overlap with the finances. It's going to overlap with relationships. It's going to overlap with other areas of your health. It's going to overlap into the other aspects of your life because how you think and feel, that signal goes out, it's what comes back. So you can think positive, you're going to send out those signals, and it's great until that knee gives out when you're walking up a step. And then you're like, oh, dang, how come? Well, when we do this work, we shift that energy. Pretty soon the knees aren't giving out. You don't have that pain. And it'll be 3, 4 months later, and you're like, huh, I'm kind of walking around pain free. And,
Yeah.
I have my own stories in all of those areas for myself as well. But what also happened? All of those other things improved as well because the universe is always returning the signal you sent out. We're the only ones that separate or compartmentalize. Oh, it's only about this or it's only about that. It's not true.
Hmm. So, can you explain what is? I know you mentioned how you got into this, but what is like? When did this start becoming something that was studied and used to try to help people? I mean, is this a
Yeah.
relatively new way of thinking, or is this back for forever?
Yes.
I don't know.
Um, there was a period in my life that I couldn't digest food. And it was
Hmm.
near the end of my career in the financial services world. And I was in extreme pain. And I went to the doctors and I spent 2 years in the medical community. And every 3, 4 days, they said, well, if this doesn't work, please come back. I spent 35 out of 40 days in the hospital in the ER with the please come back. And then I spent another almost 2 years going back and forth, working with gastroenterologist, internal function, uh, my actual family doctor, you name it, I've worked with them.
Hmm.
Well, at the end of 2 years, I quit going back, and I sought out a naturopathic doctor who told me I couldn't digest food, and I wasn't regrowing a mucus lining around my stomach, and gave me a 35 dollar bottle of enzymes, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Huh, dang." And she said, "Oh, because there's something outside in your life that you can't digest, you're not digesting food on the inside. But don't go looking for it, it'll surface." And 3, 4 months later, my stomach was healing and it surfaced. And that was when I uncovered the infidelity of my husband at the time.
Mm.
So I left the marriage. I was a single parent of 2 kids. I decided after a year, I is what I had myself in common. So I moved to an ashram. It's a spiritual living community. So I could take a year sabbatical and uncover myself and see. And I started studying brainwave patterns, science, meditation, you name it, quantum physics. If I could get
Hmm.
my hands on it, I studied. And then I studied spiritual pathways and started putting different things together. A year goes by, I'm in a different relationship. And at the end of that relationship, he decided that it was okay to suffocate me, put his hand around my throat, and attempt to take my life.
Hmm.
And he took his hand off of me before I took my last breath, wanted me to retaliate. I couldn't, wasn't who I am. And I left. And so when I moved back to where I started, I was left financially devastated. And it was also during the time of the global recession
Yeah.
that here I am starting completely over. And all of those things happened within 4 to 5 years. So, with all of the different studies that I've done, Western studies, Eastern studies, embracing and living and experiencing the different lifestyles, just not taking a course and getting a certificate. It's actually living in those paradigms and studying the ancient texts. It's old information that is brought new in an easier way in today's world because we're used to the common. We follow Western culture, we follow Western advice, we follow a coach, we follow a doctor. So it's ancient principles in modern times. I hope that
That's
answered that part of the questions.
no,
It's both.
it's no, it's fascinating to me. Like the whole thing is fascinating because like I think it's interesting the yeah, we do have, probably more modern, obviously we have modern technology, we have all these things, but
Yes.
I think like you said, the ancient texts, some of those, like the healing ways that were written back then, and how healers viewed healing, while potentially much different than now, right? Because of Western
Yes.
medicine and all this other stuff. Uh, it doesn't. I don't think it changes the fact that it was working, right? And these, and now you're applying some of these things where we feel like we've already moved beyond, right? We're so technologically savvy and scientifically, and but we
Mhm.
need to. But when we look back at what our ancestors were doing, um, it was something
Yes.
that worked and might
Good.
really get to the heart of things better than modern medicine.
Yes, and in thinking of modern medicine, we are so coached on taking a pill to magically help whatever it is going on with us, but we don't look at the side effects of it. We don't look at it in combinations with other things that we're taking. But yet, if you go back to the ancient texts and say, oh, the food of the earth or herbs is what heals, and you go back to the natural substance that the earth naturally produces, healing can then happen on a physical level with the body. Because what happens with medicine oftentimes is that they broke down the plant parts, they made it in a laboratory, and then they took the potent parts that was needed for you to overcome whatever your side effect is, but they didn't use the entire plant. Therefore, if you use the wholeness of the plant, that would counter the side effects that it would have because it was all put together instead of taking the extract of what is needed, which is why we have side effects and why we get to see commercials that say this
Yeah,
may cause, and here's your list of stuff if you
yeah,
want to overcome this and sleep better at night.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
but if you go back
you,
to the herb, yes,
yeah, yeah.
keep
You
it
can sleep
simple.
better, but instant death and like all your
Right,
joints fall
right.
apart. Oh, yeah,
Sleep
all right, well,
forever,
sure.
forever on this planet.
100% of the time it works. So, yeah, yeah. I mean, I really am fascinated about um, this kind of line of thinking and the idea of, I mean, is it, do you, and maybe you don't know, or maybe you don't have an answer to this, but do you feel that a reason this is not more available or mainstream is money, like big corporations and the pharmaceutical companies, and you know
Mhm.
that's a huge business.
It is. It is. Because it really does come down to money and the dollar. And if you study a lot of different things, some people might say these are conspiracy theories,
Hmm.
others see it differently. But yes, it comes down to money. Think of Nikola Tesla, and he made a way for everyone to have free energy. Well,
Hmm.
we know Nikola Tesla died, all of his research is gone, and now we pay for energy. So there's a piece of that there. I think the other side is that part of our belief systems comes through social conditioning, which happens through our media often and just places all around. So what you read about, what you watch on TV, what movies you watch, what music you listen to, that all programs in the subconscious. And so I think over time we have been so programmed in so many different areas that one, we don't know how to think or believe for ourselves without someone telling us. And then the other side is creating the awareness and having the awareness. But the good news is that a lot of people are now waking up and realizing, wait, maybe this pathway isn't the best pathway. Maybe there's something different. And we see it play out often in the media world. Now with the pharmacies and stuff, I've seen research. We'll see if this is verified, but the same people that own the pharmaceutical drugs also own the vitamin side of things. So if you're
Hmm.
not going to go down the road of pharmaceuticals and you get the vitamins and the minerals through supplements and the natural grocery stores and things like that, it's also owned by the same overall arcing company. So
Hmm.
it's like, well, which pathway do you want to go? It's still money. So
Yeah.
recently, after I started looking at and into some of that research, I started moving more into going back to the natural herbs, the natural medicines, and found a place where I live. I live in the state of Montana where they make their own products themselves. And it's
Hmm.
not from, and I really like them. So I'm going to use them. But then it's also the power of belief. Because if I liked another product, which may not be helpful for me, but if I believed it was, then it would work because that's how strong our belief system is.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, again, this topic, really fascinates me. And you said opening your eyes and seeing things, and like you
Yeah.
brought up the Nikola Tesla, and we could probably go on forever about
Hmm.
the central
We
banks.
can go to rabbit holes.
Yeah, we can central banks and money and
Hmm.
gold, fiat, Bitcoin, all that stuff. We could go down quite a few rabbit holes. Let me save that for another conversation, maybe. but, but so, can you talk to me about your book? I see it. I see it right behind you. The
Yeah.
Abundant Soul. Yeah.
The abundant soul. I have one right here
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
Yes. Um, yes. What would you like to know about it?
Yeah. Can you just give us, what if, for a reader who would love to make a purchase or anything like that, like what is the premise of the book, and what it's about, and anything you want to share?
Yes. So, The Abundant Soul, Creating Inner Wisdom for Financial Success, it's a self-help novel. So, it's kind of like a story like The Richest Man of Babylon, or if you read
Hmm.
The Alchemist, where you're
Hmm.
learning different principles, but in story format. And it's written that way and is designed that way for you to take the lessons and incorporate these principles that we've been talking about. My first book that I wrote by myself was called Financially Fit: Living the Secrets to an Abundant and Prosperous Life. It was written more from a healing perspective as a process, some of the how-to methods, and more factual. And then I took the main principles from that book and then wove it into a story so you can just read a story and understand and then implement because you have those aha moments. And what I absolutely love about this book, and the first thing most people say is, thank you for the larger font when I read. But some of my favorite parts are towards the end of the book when there's the awakening and the awareness of the main character, whose name is Crystal, that the things that she thought were outside of her were really inside of her. And it goes on that journey. So this is the first book of 3 in this series. This is the financial aspect of it. And there's a cliffhanger at the end. And when you read it and you know what that cliffhanger is, you know what the second book is.
Awesome. Yeah, I think those help people a lot. The story version of teaching, right? You always remember stories. Growing up, and attaching, being able to tell a story, gravitates toward us a lot more on how to, absorb the information, and keep it and learn it, and put it to practice, because you see the person in the story doing that same thing. And I've read quite a few business books that along the same lines, where they take you through a journey of you're a team leader or staff, head of a staff, and this is what's going on, and this employee, that employee. And those books always kind of stand out, of it puts you in those shoes and says, hey, how can I do this, as opposed to an instructional book, which is still helpful, um, but I feel like you have to go back and reference those, where in these you can see yourself and it really like sticks at home with you. So I think it's fascinating.
Yes. And what I really enjoy about this book is after somebody reads it and they reach out to me and they tell me or share with me, well, that home and I really liked it, or this character or in the book totally resonated with me. And there's a handful of characters in the book. And yet I love it when they come back and say, this is who I identify with. And even Bob Doyle, he was featured on The Secret almost 20 years ago. He's a New York bestselling Times author. He wrote the foreword to this
Oh,
book, but before it published, he actually read the entire manuscript. And what was fun was even in the foreword, he wrote, oh, and this character is like this, and this is similar to what I've done. And I'm like, he even resonated with the book. So that
that's
was pretty
great.
cool.
That's it's always awesome, to see that the impact you made, especially for someone like that, right? Like,
Mhm.
for him to write the forward and he felt that character. That's a pretty cool for as you as an author.
And if for a law of attraction expert to say that, you're on the right track.
Oh, for sure. No, for sure. Well, we know we've talked quite a while. I know you're very busy, but I just want to ask you one more question. And it, if and this is along the lines of the military, right? So for a military member coming out,
Mhm.
could be 1 year in service, 20 years in service, whatever the case is, and is interested in your program as a
Mhm.
one-on-one,
Mhm.
uh, what would you recommend? Did you recommend they reach out to you, that
Mhm.
they like for them to achieve like confidence in the job search? Like, what would you recommend to them, and what would you kind of walk them through as someone joining the civilian side of the world and having a lack of confidence?
So, what I would initially say is just book a complimentary 15-minute call with me. It's bettercalldawna.com, because what I want to know specifically is where you're at, where you want to go, and what your goals are. Each person's going to be a little bit different. And based on that information and based on how long those types of things in the military, 1 year is going to be a little bit different than somebody who's a 20-year veteran, with
Mhm.
the amount of work and the time that's going to take to do what is being asked. Then I can put together what is best or custom wise at the least costing
Mhm.
pricing for the veterans, or actually really anybody who's listening to this podcast,
Mhm.
because it's abundance for everybody. And so once I know a little bit more of each person's personal situation, then I can take that, fine tune it, and put it together. Because for some people, you might be really fine in a group program or in doing 1 or 2 sessions. And for others, you might want to do something over a year. So each group is a little different. So best thing, bettercalldonna.com, and we will put together custom for you.
That- That's great, and you made a great point. It could be anybody. One of the probably most underrepresented um, groups coming out of the military or even in the military are the spouses, whether they're male or female. And the reason
Yes.
behind that is they're constantly moving, and so
Hmm.
the spouse who's serving has their job and their community, right? And no
Hmm.
matter where they go, they will always have that. The spouse is leaving their friend group or their civilian job or whatever it is and starting over again from
Yes.
scratch, and it's hard for them to, we're only going to be here 2 years, I'm never going to get a job, I just left all my friends, and I've seen it play out over the years where it becomes very
Yes.
difficult for the spouse. So I think
Very,
it's
very.
very important.
Yes, because their whole support structure changes with every segment. And you might stay in contact with some of them from time to time, but we're creatures of habit. If they're not in your everyday initial paradigm, you might not reach out to that person that you know 6 years ago. So yeah, and they need support too. Even in the health world, there's the person who is sick or needs better or more health care than the spouse or the partner, but partner and the spouse also needs that help because they're the initial caregiver to the one that's sick. So it's the same thing. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, Dawna, I'm really thrilled to have this conversation today. It it is something, like I've mentioned a few times, that I've really been thinking about and trying to read on. Like I've been reading about quantum physics and all the vibrations and all that. Now that I have a little bit more free time, I'm diving into more and more reading on different subjects, and it really is something I'm interested in, and I think is very beneficial for us. And so, thank you for your time, and I'll make sure I have all your links in the description, and I will be sure to let you know before I publish. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much
All
for
right,
having me here.
all right, thank you. Bye. All right, it's